Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm Alastair Stevens.
I'm Elizabeth Stevens.
And I'm Daphne Olive.
Ladies, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Storms on the Way to discuss the first episode of the Starz TV adaptation of American Gods, The Bone Orchard, written by Brian Fuller and Michael Green, directed by David Slade. This episode basically covers the first 2 chapters of the book, more or less, with some pretty free adaptation. Mm-hmm. Daphne, you're coming to this show cold without reading the book. What did you make of it?
Okay, I loved this episode. I guess I have some caveats to that, but mostly I really loved it. I do have to explain that as a non-book reader, I did actually read the first chapter and maybe a half. I really wanted to read this book, and then that was right around when Liz and I started doing our podcast, Fathoms Deep, and so it's pretty much just
your whole life for a while,
right? Yeah. It's been all pirates all the time for me, so I haven't actually been reading much of anything in the past year. So yeah, I'm not 100% pure. I kind of know the premise, and I read a little bit, but yeah. So I guess some of this stuff was vaguely
familiar. Mm-hmm.
Familiar. Thank you. That's the word. But yes, I loved it. I think great start. And should I just come up front with it?
Sure.
Ian McShane.
Ian McShane. How do you start talking about American Gods without talking about Ian McShane? Good Lord.
Right. Had I never heard of the books or never knew anyone who liked it, there was just no way I was not watching this because I am a huge fan of Ian McShane.
Right. This is the conjunction of 2 serious lines of interest for you. The first being Ian McShane and the second being Starz original programming, I guess.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. Thank you, Starz. Thank you for giving me another gift. I love you, Starz.
Elizabeth, what did you make of this first episode? You've been reading the book along with the Storms on the Way seminar.
I have been, and really enjoying the book too. It's the first Neil Gaiman book I've really been able to sink my teeth into. Also, I have also been completely avoiding all of the material that they've been sending out, that Starz has been sending out, all of the promotional material for American Gods. So I came in cold, actually, knowing only that Ian McShane, because Daphne was so excited, and because of that, I was really quite surprised, actually, because the initial sequence with the Vikings, which, first of all, I felt took forever, and so was surprising because of that, was very both gritty and at the same time comic book panel over the top. And then we got such a clean show. And by clean, I mean clean and bright and like somebody went over it with Lysol clean, which was
almost
very
glossy.
Surprising. Glossy is very good. Yes, Alastair.
Especially the blood.
Show.
Yes.
Super glossy blood.
Which is a very different tone from what I personally feel from the book. The book has a real kind of gritty Midwestern Americana and that kind of 90s feel. And the movie has a very modern Hollywood kitsch Americana, which is also very, it's very American, and I get it. But it was such a surprising choice that's took me back just a little bit. But I think that overall, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what comes next and how they're going to tell this story, because they're following the material and the story very closely, but the tone is completely different, and that surprised me.
It's a really interesting adaptation in that I think you're right. They're maintaining the structure. They're kind of generally maintaining the pace, but there's a lot of textual transformation, and that tonal transformation is stark. I think you and I talked a little about this before we sat down to watch it, and I think we were both expecting something more like Supernatural.
Like Supernatural is exactly what I was expecting.
That film grain, somewhat desaturated, a little dirty. It's
a little dirty. Yeah. I feel like you kind of need a tetanus shot when you're done watching the show.
But in a good way.
Right. Sure. In a good way. Absolutely.
So I think what we're going to do is move through.
Fascinating to me, because I don't know. I don't know what to expect.
Sure.
So
sure.
I guess
so interesting to me to hear that. I don't really have anything to say about that because all I know really is the show. So that's just things like this. When you all say them about the book, is just going to be really fun for me because I don't have that context for it. Like for me, I'm like, oh well, this show, of course, it has that weird intro with the Vikings, and then everything looks kind of like it's made of plastic.
A little bit. Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
but see, that doesn't seem weird for me because that's just what I know. So like that doesn't seem.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, they're obviously trying throughout to evoke the spirit of Americana, particularly this kind of somewhat anonymous middle American kind of perspective on this country. Does that feel authentic to you, Daphne? Did it feel like an America that you recognize?
Okay. You know what my image of it, and this might coincide with just weird conversation I had with some of friends, people who are going to be listening to this on Twitter about road trips and like rest stops. But what it reminds me of in a way is not necessarily like gritty Americana, but like when you would go to a roadside attraction and you have all those plastic, like tourist oriented versions of Americana.
Absolutely.
That's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of like the tourist trap plastic version of what you like, that thing where you go visit the Grand Canyon and then you get the plastic version of something with the Grand Canyon with like kind of like a comic book version of who you would expect to be at the Grand Canyon.
You don't know this yet because you haven't read the book. That is wildly appropriate. That is an enormously insightful observation, Daphne, which we'll get to, I guess, in a couple of weeks.
This is fun. We should like start a game where it's like when I say random things that are actually relevant to the book.
We'll trust all of our listeners on Twitter to keep some kind of Google Doc spreadsheet open of all of your uncanny predictions, Daphne. I want to start then by basically moving through the episode. We're going to take this kind of sequence by sequence, I think, and we have to immediately start with the title sequence, this incredibly striking. I mean, it's impossible to watch the intro sequence to American Gods and not think of Black Sails.
It's funny. I thought of Black Sails and Stranger Things. It seemed like such a crossover from those two. Very similar.
It's a show that absolutely lays out its story. It establishes this incredibly powerful and potent and somewhat intoxicating aesthetic right from the beginning. We have this powerful confluence of fundamental American iconography. There's a lot of cars, there's a lot of neon, there's a lot of the tokens of commercialism, the tokens of American life, along with these primal religious icons. Daphne, I mean, the simplest question, I guess, do you like the title sequence?
I love it aesthetically. I started to try, like when my last watch, right before we sat down to record, I started to think about how this relates to what I know of the of the story so far, which is very little. I think I'll stick with the I like it aesthetically, and then maybe when we start talking, like, because I feel like my last watch I started to really see themes that are starting to happen, so then I'll like maybe tie that into themes. But yeah, just like the really fascinating combination of the mundane and the holy is, I guess, what I'm seeing there, and how like both of them are being elevated in a similar way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It absolutely does. Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I saw in it. I mean, other than it is really pretty. I mean,
I
get a little caught in when things are just pretty. It takes me a little while to get past that, but yes, it is.
Elizabeth, I mentioned the Black Sails intro sequence, which has always been striking, has always been powerful. But as that show continued through the arc of its run, it felt more and more as though the title sequence had always been a kind of thematic statement about the show. Do you have that same sense of the American Gods title
Absolutely,
sequence?
I do. Yeah, and I think that in that sense, it's a home run. I think that they absolutely captured. They automatically told me that the tone was going to be different because it was so, like you said, glossy. It was so polished and a little bit more. What I keep on putting back to like
super colorful
Hollywood glam. Like it's got this Hollywood glam thing going on. And even when later on in the show, when it says somewhere in America, and you
but it's
see
Hollywood.
the Hollywood sign, you're like, that's not somewhere, that's Hollywood. So I think they're doing this very purposefully. But yeah, absolutely. The way I agree what you said, Daphne, how they elevated both the iconography and the kitsch, the Americana kitsch. And then we started to get, as we moved further into the credit sequence, the technology coming in and that little bit of combative spoilers, I guess, but yeah, it was very.
I wouldn't even say after watching the first episode that's a spoiler.
think you're right.
I mean,
Sure.
come on.
No, I think
I
you're
mean,
right.
it's pretty. That's pretty much set up. Like,
Yeah, and I have not finished the book. Also, I should say, so I
Right.
really don't know where all of this is going. So
But you are ahead of the seminar because
I'm
you've
ahead of the
been
seminar a bit.
just
yeah.
engaged by this book.
Just because I want to read it, I want to consume it whole. Yes,
Sure.
rather than just following along. Absolutely.
Not unlike Bilquist.
okay, yeah, I was going to say, I
Unlike
don't think I could
Bilquist.
ever hear anyone say consume whole ever again without.
We'll get to
Yeah.
that. We'll get to
We'll
that.
definitely get to that because
I
we
mean, which is
begin-
not to me to say that I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
I love Bilquist.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna
love
say
Bilquist
straight off,
too.
I love her.
Love
her.
Bilquist. Mhm.
And I mean, I think have the proper reaction is that I adore her and I'm a little terrified of her at the same time, which
I think that's
does-
exactly it.
is that not how we should be approaching our deities?
So we begin the episode with a scene that is taken from the book, but forcibly recontextualized and pretty freely adapted. We get the narrated introduction by a character that we will meet later, so I don't want to go too deeply into that.
Good. Oh, I'm glad to hear that because I'm fascinated by who that person is.
Yes, you'll like him a lot, Daphne.
Yes.
I'm
Okay, great.
absolutely confident. But we get the story of the Northmen coming to America. We get the story of this absolutely calamitous journey across the Atlantic, the arrival on this new continent. These men who are caught between the sea and the land, just stranded on the shore without wind, without support, without food, without, of course, the blessing of their gods and the trials that they endure almost voluntarily in order to leave this place. It is splashy. It is provocatively
Flashy.
violent. Yes, in both senses, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
How did it work for you, Elizabeth? Did it engage you immediately? Were you turned off somewhat by it? Because you know the frame of this scene, I suppose, within the context of the novel, but this is not where the book starts.
It is not where the book starts. It did not work for me at all on any level. It did not work for me as an adaptation from the book. It did not work for me as a television show that would catch my attention. If it wasn't for the fact that I was already so invested in the book, I don't know if I could have gotten past it, to be completely
Interesting.
honest.
Yeah.
Because it's just not for me. It's that very like 300. Again, it reminds me of like a comic book.
Yeah, it has
which
that
is-
Zack Snyder kind of 300
yeah,
aesthetic,
absolutely.
yeah.
Which tons of people are into, and that's great. And even that is kind of an American pop culture reference in itself, which I understand objectively. Subjectively, I don't like it. It doesn't work for me. I even the violence of it wasn't that visceral grit of, and this is where it didn't work for me as an adaptation, because the part of the book that speaks to me so much with those coming to America references is that we get this very different narrative voice, which we got because we got the voiceover of Ibis, but it's more of a history, but it's this history that's done almost like a folk tale. There was nothing folk tale about this at all. This was very Zack Snyder. Yeah. And so on that, it was just a miss for me.
No, that is not an uncommon reaction.
And too long. Too
prologue
long?
definitely split the audience. Even as we were live tweeting it last
true.
night as we record this, there was a certain tension there between those who loved it and were engaged by it and those who were left completely cold by
Yes.
it. Daphne, how did you respond to it?
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I'm very similar to Liz. It's interesting because, I think had I come into this with no pre-investment in the show, I was like very inclined to be happy when I first watched it.
Sure.
Because it's exactly the thing when we talk about Black Sails that like we're like there isn't violence that doesn't feel like it matters, and this did not feel like violence that matters. Like, but on the flip side, because I was so invested and so I watched it multiple times, I managed to find things in it that I loved. So like its aesthetic, not so much for me. The many arrows thing, I'm still trying to like. I feel like the many arrows was kind of intellect. Like I guess I like this part more intellectually. I certainly don't like it aesthetically. The many arrows was interesting because it was like yes, I understood as someone who doesn't know what this scene is about. I understood that it was in the past, but the many arrows were so absurd that then I knew that I was not looking at a realistic depiction of
Right.
of history. Like, so that made it really clear. So it's like weird. I don't love that it was comical. I don't love that tone because I don't like comedy and that much violence. Okay, that's not true. Well, I love Pulp Fiction, so I can't really make that claim. But I don't know. It was like a bit much for me.
Yeah.
But then, afterwards watching him, I loved how it set certain tone. Like, I don't love the aesthetic tone, but it set other tones. Like, it's not just that they were having hardships. That nature was being expressed as like personalities that were actively working against them. So like had I known nothing, I was like, okay, I'm in, some sort of allegory. Like I'm in a religious sphere because the wind is a character working against them. The water is a character working against them. So it was, so that also said, okay, this isn't just history. This is, within some version of their worldview also.
Right, and myth.
Which is interesting, though. I think there is a tension there between the narrative voice of Ibis, which is somewhat forcible, somewhat intrusive, and presumably the in-universe narrative voice of these Northmen who are stranded,
Right, and my note, even though I had watched it a few times and made some of these observations, my notes for this was, is this like a story being told, or is this supposed to be a chronicle? Like, because you can't tell. Because you see the writing. I don't know, even now when you say this name, Ibis, I have no idea who that is. So so for me, still, that question exists. Like, is this supposed to be like a writing of history, or is this supposed to be, a story told to us in kind of storytelling language? And I don't know. And I still don't know. I don't come out of this episode knowing that.
No, and I'm not sure that we're ever going to get a definitive answer on that particular question, because
I don't know that either.
Of the prologue itself is so weird. I mean, like you, Daphne, I am intellectually engaged by this prologue far more than I am either aesthetically or emotionally engaged by the prologue. There are things here that I completely adore, and there are things that don't necessarily build narratively in the way that they ought to. Up to and including the final sequence where we leave the beach, where the Northmen retreat to their homeland. And
that feather?
It's a silly observation. Well, the feather I actually like quite a lot. But the beat before that, they've just had this bloody melee. They've just tried to invoke their god, first by the creation of the totem, then by the putting out of the eyes, then by the burning sacrifice, and then finally by this war. And yet, when they get back on the ship, it looks like the ship is as full as it was when they arrived.
Exactly. Everything seems fine. Yeah.
So there are these odd
So it's like the whole thing might be an allegory, like they didn't actually do that?
Yeah.
Also, wait, can I just make a note? I love the shirts and no shirts. I mean, I don't know, maybe that was some sort of nurse thing. But I was like, oh my God, if this isn't like a bunch of guys going out to play soccer in the park and they're like, okay, you all are shirts and you're no shirts.
Yeah.
I loved that. It was like such a subtle thing, but it's just like, these are just any group of guys.
Right.
I loved that. That might be my favorite thing of the whole thing is how half of them, because I was just like, okay, were Norsemen doing this? Was this actually a thing? Like, but it is a thing now. It's just like such a guy. It's such a guy thing.
No, you're right. I love that. And we should note too, the most, I think, provocative detail in the entire cold open, because this prologue is shot in a slightly different aspect ratio. It feels more cinematic. It's slightly wider and slightly narrower. So we get this wonderful moment where the arcing arm plus sword breaks the frame. And actually is suspended above the limits of this weird cropped frame, which feels oddly transgressive, but also like a joke. So it's another moment where intellectually I think that's fascinating. I could talk for an hour about that, but I don't actually know what I'm going to say about it because I'm not sure how much is there and how much it's just, isn't this cool?
I propose that at the end of all this, we go back to this first bit. Not knowing really what's going to happen, but I just feel like I might have different feelings about this little opening.
Yes.
I
think that's a very good idea. And I do love the final beat of the prologue, I should say, where we learn that when the Northmen return to these shores, they will find their god waiting for them and his war.
Right.
That's a really great beat to allow us to move into what is effectively the first beat of our actual story, which is the prison and Shadow and Loki Lysmith and this ongoing conversation. Prison has a way.
Wait. What's his name?
Loki Lysmith.
Oh, really?
You like that?
I do like that. That just answered a question I had in a note about who he is.
There were a bunch of people who had read the book during the first session of the seminar, and when I read the name out loud because they hadn't heard it,
oh yeah,
YouTube chat just erupted.
lit up.
Oh my god!
I was like, okay, I had a question like, who the fuck is this dude?
Yeah.
And is he human, or is he in Shadow's mind, or is he not? Because he shows up at that airport, kind of.
Kind of. Sure.
Okay, awesome.
And perfectly
I didn't
cast,
know.
I have to say.
Okay,
God
so now I'm
damn.
just showing that I don't really do my homework because I really should have written down the cast names, but I'm kind
if you
of
write it down as 2 words, it doesn't necessarily jump out at you. But
That's true, and also that would have meant me possibly being robbed of this moment of realizing who he is.
which is a very good moment. It's a very good moment.
Really enjoyed that. Okay, go on.
So
Sorry.
we get this sense of oppression and this sense of Shadow throughout this is saying that the weather feels wrong, that he feels as though he's got an axe over his head, that something bad is coming. How does the entire prison sequence work for you, Elizabeth? Because aesthetically, I think this is perhaps much more what you were looking for from American Gods.
Again, though, it looked really pretty to me. That was an awfully pretty, clean prison. And also it seemed big. The scope of it was big. There was a lot of open space. And I missed that sense of claustrophobia of having to get out, of the heaviness of the sky, of the prison being so small.
Yeah.
I actually missed that sense. And so his release from prison wasn't as effective because his world didn't seem as small. But I loved Loki so much that I can forgive all of that. Frankly.
What is it that works for you so well about Loki?
It's funny because he actually reminds me of a neighbor of mine. But
I know which neighbor.
yeah,
Yeah, he does.
yes. So, but he has got this particular energy that I had a little bit of trouble making Loki work for me as I read the character because he was clearly so. It was very clear that Gaiman had a clear vision of who he was and how he spoke and his rhythms and patterns, but it was hard to make it work for me in the book, especially alongside Shadow, who is so smart and not quite laconic, but chooses his words very carefully, whereas Loki is just like,
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
shotgun blast everywhere, which it just kind of took me a second to fall into his patterns. But the second this guy started talking, I was like, oh no, I know this guy. Yeah, I get this. This is working for me entirely.
Oh, I love that.
Daphne, how did he work for you? How did this entire sequence work? And I guess we'll put a pin in Shadow for right now. We'll talk about him in just a moment because, good Lord.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, okay, sorry. I'm just still a little blown away by the whole Loki thing, but I wanted to bring up different things about the jail period. I really, again, I know a little bit about Shadow now, but I really love that the first conversation, which happens to be with Loki, where he talks about jail being a relief. That
yes.
that that the relief of if you're already caught, they can't catch you. And I think I tweeted last night something about wow, that seems like not really being alive if that's what you consider a benefit. And so I just felt like that attitude was just I knew who this guy was. I was like, okay, this is a person who's afraid of the world. This is a person who would choose to not be wholly alive if that means not being in danger.
We get, I don't want to throw forward too freely here, but
No.
we do get
I mean, this is my
brilliant
impression.
beat. No, I love that. I absolutely love that. We get a beat with Wednesday later when he says that Shadow lost something inside prison, lost something more than time.
Yep.
Does that speak to you of this same sense of a kind of fragile awareness of the world outside, a kind of fear almost of the world outside?
Yeah, no, a fear, and which is, so striking in such a large man, especially. I mean, not that small people should be afraid and large people should not, but at the same time, those are generally our expectations. It's like Mad Sweeney is what you think of a large guy being like, bring it on. And it's interesting because I feel like in this whole episode, we see Shadow like being that guy and not being that guy. And like, and that seems to be his conflict. Like that perhaps he's decided to be someone who's very cautious. Like it seems like underneath there might be a not cautious person that he doesn't want to recognize, which I guess is another variation on the fear. But it's like, I feel like what I saw in this episode was like fear that he's imposing on himself because he wants to be a cautious person, and the actual not 100% aliveness of someone who is so afraid of the world that being in jail almost seems like a benefit.
Right. And we get this sense, I think, throughout this episode, and certainly it's true in the book, that Shadow's primary concern is not going back to prison.
Yes.
That he is now going to keep his head down and
Sure.
try and avoid any potential temptation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
That seems hilarious. Okay, so yes, I just want to say that I'm delighted that Starz has offered us now another quiet, tough guy who plays with a coin in his hands. Because
So your
I don't
primary
know.
value,
I'm not.
Daphne?
I wouldn't have thought so.
But here we are.
And I'm definitely not saying that Shadow strikes me at all as a Charles Vane, although, but it just, that just delighted me. I don't know. Should we keep track of that? Might that be?
Perhaps so.
Perhaps so. And I do have to say my one thing that is troubling to me, and I'm just going to say it now, and then I won't harp on it because it does show up. I am quite troubled by the lynching stuff in this episode.
Me too.
I tweeted last night when we were live tweeting, I was like, well, I really hope that, this pans out into something that is important in the story. And then I was like, you know what? I don't. Like, had this not panned out to be something important in the story in this episode, I'm against using it.
Yeah.
I don't care if 5 episodes from now we get some explanation or some really important character thing. You can't just use lynching imagery, and boy, did they use it a lot. And it's just one of those, a lot. And this is my official protest against that.
Right.
I actually don't care what their purpose was. I'm quite troubled by that.
Yeah, particularly if it was as casual and as almost thoughtless and artless in its adaptive process as it seems to be. One of the most interesting things about American Gods as a book is that Shadow's racial makeup, his ethnicity, is never identified.
It's completely ambiguous, purposefully.
But when you cast an actor to play this character, you are inevitably going to draw connotative connection there.
Sure.
And you're right. In this particular instance, I didn't think it was responsibly used. And I'm not sure that there is a way of using that kind of iconography
It was
responsibly.
so heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Right. It was very heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Right. And it just, it's just imagery that just has a lot more meaning than really, there are just certain things that you can't use.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to use them for a certain purpose. And this is one of the highest on that list of things that has just so much meaning. You had to really had a good reason to use it, and they didn't. Obviously, even if they do later on, they obviously didn't in this episode. Therefore, I'm left with just that image without
Right.
without responsible use of it.
I wonder if the choice was made kind of in contrast to that idea of history scrubbing itself clean, like when we tell history. If that's the only reason I can think of them wanting to do it, is as a part of iconography and saying this
certainly
is
one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't care. I mean,
in
this case,
I'm not
care.
excusing it. I'm just trying to.
The
I
three
understand.
explanations are: this speaks to our perspective on American history. I think that's absolutely that could be a defense.
They could have
I don't think it
so
works.
many other things for that.
Sure. I think
this one's
also
this one's too painful. This one's too wrong.
Yeah. Or it's going to pay off later, which also isn't a defense. Or it's true to the book, which also isn't a defense.
Nope.
So any way you slice it, I just don't think it earns its place in this episode.
Exactly.
And, this episode does make a few missteps. I think there are some
Right.
pacing problems, particularly in the back half. I think that there are some really odd choices that I wish we just kind of had another swing at certain parts in the episode, which we'll get to as we break it down. But Let's get back to the prison and, of course, the news of Laura. Shadow's early release. We get this fantastic perspective on Shadow as a man. We get the phone call, which is luminous and gorgeous. And then we get what is, for me, the most distracting thing in the entire episode. I want to talk a little about Shadow's magic suit, you guys.
Right? Again, glossy is the word, Alastair. I love it. I think you nailed it. Yeah, why? Why does he have this perfect, lovely, tailored, impeccable suit?
His James Bond suit.
James
Particularly
effing Bond.
because when we get to Audrey later at the cemetery, she comments on how filled out he is. He's been working out in prison. He's
How do
clearly
his clothes
bigger
fit?
than he used to be. How is this suit so impeccably tailored, and how does
Well,
it
the
stay
shirt is
clean?
How does it survive the mad
The shirt
swinging
is
fight?
working really
It's
hard to
supposed
stay
to be
closed.
tight.
I think he intended it
True.
that way.
Yes. And that does show the bulk up, but it also does seem just a little bit like a guy who likes to wear a tight shirt. Yeah.
It does kind of
I did
speak to this
not
idea
question
of...
this at all because I was just, to be honest,
I don't
was
think
just
it's...
enjoying it.
Well, and
Which is
don't
totally
you,
fine.
when you leave prison, don't you get the clothes that you wore in?
Yes.
Isn't that how,
Yes.
So
Yes.
why an impeccable suit when he came in also?
Well,
Well,
also,
because
I
he was
don't, I
knocking
don't
over
know.
casinos.
Oh, okay.
See,
All right,
when
that's
he,
good.
that, for me, that was the only
That's right.
thing that I could come up with because I did think that. Like, I was ready to let it go because I was just enjoying the suit. But the only time I thought of it is literally when he walked out, and then when he said casinos to Wednesday, I was like,
Yeah.
but
okay.
of course.
Makes a certain amount of
The
sense.
only way, I mean, obviously we learned that he's some sort of con man.
Yeah.
I love their con. I mean, okay. Yeah, that's my other thing that I love. Con men. Really love con men.
Okay. Noted.
Fast-talking con artists. That'll do it for Daphne.
Well, and then if they happen to be Ian McShane, I'm just too happy, guys. I'm entirely too happy. Right. The minute he said casino and they were talking, they were like so obviously both speaking the same language.
Yes.
Like they just knew the names of cons.
Yes.
The suit actually worked for me. The fact that it stays clean through all of his this episode seems insane to me. The fact that he had it coming out of prison made sense to me because if you're going to do some sort of con job in a casino, you're going to be wearing the best suit money can buy.
I think that there is at the heart of this story an intentional discontinuity between the two visions that were given of America. We're supposed to see this very naturalistic, very open, very mundane, as you said earlier, Daphne, vision of Middle America in particular, coupled with these enormously exaggerated and heightened and magical sequences, the bone orchard, the dream of the bison with the flaming eyes, the Bilquist scene, even the technical boy scene at the end of the episode. Does that disjunction work for you, Daphne? Do you see two different worlds here? Does the first feel appropriately natural and authentic? And do the other sequences feel appropriately heightened?
Oh, see, that's interesting. See, now this is that you just asked me a loaded question, right? I think you're asking me a question
You
from
begging
a
the
book
question,
perspective.
Alastair
I did
Stevens?
kind of beg the question there a little
Yeah,
bit. I did kind of beg the question a little bit.
Right. No, it's interesting because I'm learning a lot while we're recording about what might be different from the book. Like for me, the experience I had of this, which really made sense to me with a lot of the content of it, was that it's not that different. Like that perhaps this idea of the, the real world and the world of, I mean, I'm allowed to say that they're gods, right? I mean, I got that part.
It's in the title of the show. I think at this point we're
okay,
allowed
fine.
to jump to the conclusion. Yeah.
I mean, again, I can't really spoil. I mean, I knew the premise of the book kind of, but I mean, I can't really spoil because I don't know stuff. But I mean, come on, seriously, Bilquist and, Wednesday also, wink, wink, by the way. But so for me, that the message that I was getting from the show is that actually that division is a very superficial one. This non-division was shown in how, Wednesday clearly was knowing too much about Shadow, and Shadow kind of reacted, but like his reaction was way too little for this guy who like just happens to sit down next to him and knows crazy shit about him.
Yes.
So that for me kind of fit with this idea that like the division is less than we think it is. Like, so it's just interesting to me that you all had this expectation of grittiness versus dreamy glossiness or this separation, because for me, I felt like this whole episode was saying to me that line is so much thinner than you would expect it to be. And I was getting that visually, and I was getting that also from the story itself, like that Bilquis is using online dating, like that, just like it's just like these god figures are so comfortably, I mean, not necessarily comfortable, she doesn't seem comfortable, but like so aptly using our world, that, the fact that Wednesday can con his way into first class. I mean, this is not the stuff you think of gods doing.
Of course. Right.
You don't think of them online dating. You don't think of them like conning their way into an airplane seat or necessarily needing an airplane seat. It's just like, So I felt like the whole message I got from this first episode was that that thing, I mean, again, like I said with the opening credits, like that the line between the divine and the mundane is just like terrifyingly not really there, actually.
Sure. I think it's really interesting that we move toward that, the realization of that idea, by making the mundane world more heightened, by including these odd little, because I don't think it's accidental that Shadow's suit is magical. I don't think it's accidental that his
these are
shirt
all
is pristine.
I just wonder about them.
Yeah.
Right. No, but like after his fight with Mad Sweeney, I mean, look at Mad Sweeney. He's like covered in blood. And Shadow's like, oh wait, let me just let me just like use my little airplane thing that they gave me with the wipies to like clean my face, and I'm all good.
I mean, I'm a man who has been known to wear a white dress shirt from time to time. Let me tell you, that thing just won't stay clean for an hour, regardless. You don't have to get in a bar fight with Mad Sweeney to muss that thing up. So, Elizabeth, do you feel that there's intentionality behind this? Do you feel that this is
it's certainly a choice,
purposeful?
And it's a strong choice. I just don't understand it yet, and I might not even. It might just be a way that they decided to do it, like, let's go Vegas, and because it is Americana still, and so I think that's just what it came down to. The bar, the Jack's.
Oh my God, that bar! Can we go hang out in that bar? I love that bar.
Well, yeah, okay. It is fascinating. It's interesting, but it's very California. It is not Midwestern at all, and the whole show feels very California to me. Very Hollywood, very Vegas, very West Coast.
Interesting.
Which I almost wish they just
or
decided
East Coast.
to
We actually
set
have
it.
a bar in DC that has teeth and an alligator.
Sure. Well, and the whole, maybe even like the like Jersey, Coney Island, like it's that kind of
kitsch.
The lights, the kitsch. It really is that. But I do associate that with the coasts.
Yeah,
so I wonder if it would have worked better for me, especially because in the prison there was the plaque in the background that said it as like Oklahoma, and I'm currently in Oklahoma, for anyone who might not know, and nope, definitely not there. This is definitely not where this is set.
There were actually sequences within this episode that were shot right here in Oklahoma.
I'll be damned.
Yep.
Shows what I know. But I almost wish that they had just, like when they did Somewhere in America and set it over Hollywood, like I wish they just committed to that and said like we're on the coast, like this is coastal kitsch instead of Midwestern, because it that misses for me. It doesn't feel familiar in the way that I feel that it should.
See, but that makes me curious if that's going to have a thematic purpose. But it might not. I mean, because it might also just be a product of that thing that happens where people on the coasts try to do an image of the middle part of America and just get it wrong.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm hopeful that's not the case. I'm hopeful that this is intentional and that we're going to see this develop into something of thematic importance and thematic weight as we move through, because I feel as though if you're going to make an adaptation of American Gods and you're going to miss that sense of the heart of America, a sense which Neil Gaiman, a British writer, manages to evoke beautifully.
Really beautifully, yeah.
I think if you're going to miss that does not speak well to the strength of your adaptation. So I'll be keeping a close eye on that as we move forward. It does read to me as intentional, so I'm hoping that we're going to build to something. America already feels somewhat more mythic, and Daphne, as you said, with dazzling perspicacity, more like a roadside attraction version of itself than any real place. I miss a certain amount of connectivity with that mundane world because, for example, when we get to Eagle Point, I'm skipping over the airplane conversation because we're definitely going to go back and spend a long time there. But when we get to Eagle Point, I don't have a sense of Eagle Point as a town at all. And yet that's important. And we have classic, Hollywood Cemetery number 35.
Right.
Yeah.
Where we've seen that exact set, I'm sure, in 17 other things.
And such a beautiful chapel. We talked about that too.
An excessively beautiful chapel.
Not at all small town, middle of nowhere.
That's my thought. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
it still feels heightened. And I think you're right. It feels like the Hollywood version or the TV adaptation version of itself. And that gives me hope. Because if there is an awareness,
it's a strong choice at least.
Yeah,
Yes, sure.
if there's an awareness in this show that it is the TV adaptation of itself, that its role as a TV show is to be a TV show, and that is going to play into the idea of representation and the idea of iconography and the ideas of faith and belief.
I quite like that.
Super into that.
Yeah.
I think there's more than enough in this first episode to suggest that is the case, but we'll definitely keep an eye on that. Daphne, I would love to talk about this all day with you, but I'm going to give you the opportunity now to talk about Ian McShane.
Oh my God, I love Ian McShane. Sorry.
You just blushed. That's adorable.
I know. I really, really like him a lot.
Clearly.
Just so people understand, like, Deadwood was like a really important TV show for me. Like, Deadwood was like that was my show where I was like, holy shit, television can be something different.
Yeah.
And, clearly that means a lot to me now. And Ian McShane is my guy. I love him. And just one episode in, I gotta say, like, Wednesday is giving Al Swearingen a run for his money as like the perfect place to put Ian McShane. I'm very excited about this. But yes, the McShane-ness comes out once. I mean, the con in the beginning is lovely and adorable, and we get to see him speak with maybe his. No, he doesn't actually have that. I think his accent is weirder than that. Really,
No, yeah, it's closer than that. But yes, yes.
But yeah, he does that thing where like I don't give a shit, but deep down he does thing, and I need to find better words for my love of Ian McShane. I'll get there soon.
You've got time. You're good. We've got 8 episodes to get through. You're good.
Exactly. By the end, I'll be much, much better at talking about why I love him beyond just like, I love this guy. He talks and it makes me happy the way he talks. But yes, I think I don't know Wednesday. I know Ian McShane. I feel like Wednesday's already just a great thing for Ian McShane to be doing, and they're both benefiting from each other.
I'm very happy with the casting throughout, I think.
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
yay.
The casting across the board is excellent.
It's
Ian
really
McShane
well
is standout. The wonderful Lauren Sarner, friend of Fathoms Deep, a Black Sails podcast, I should say, who is just wonderful and a great writer and commentator on television, tweeted last night during the live tweet that she was beginning to suspect that Ian McShane wasn't playing Wednesday, that Wednesday has secretly in real life been masquerading as Ian McShane for all these years.
I saw that, and that gave me joy because it felt like that to me, but I don't know anything.
Absolutely. That felt right to me. Elizabeth, were you immediately engaged by Wednesday coming from the book and having a sense of this character already? Did Ian McShane work for you?
Very much so. Yeah, I loved it from the go. And this is my first introduction to Ian McShane, I should say, too. I would not have been able to pick him out of a lineup. So I've not seen Deadwood. And if I've seen him in something
now
else,
I might be able to
which is
convince you.
Now you might be able to convince me. That's very true. I've not been the first to point me in that direction. So we'll just have to see. But yeah, I liked him from the jump. I think he's so compelling, and I really think my favorite moment from the entire episode, as far as an Ian McShane moment, was him grinning at the bar when the fight breaks out. That
wasn't that lovely?
Perfection.
Very good moment.
Just lovely.
We get maybe a dozen different tiny little cutaways to him, and he is always perfect and manages to communicate in those fractions of a second.
Yes.
So much character, so much depth. He's just great. And his ability to navigate, and this I think does speak a little to Deadwood, to Daphne, his ability to navigate sudden and immediate gravitas.
Yes.
And then that mischievous, quirky, whimsical caprice.
Mischievous is good, yes.
It's just, it's a standout performance in a show full of standout performances. It is not, Daphne, brace yourself. It is not my favorite performance in the episode. We'll get to that.
Oh, no, mine too.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
I know.
Pretty sure we're in agreement. We'll find out.
I think I'm just going to have to just say that I'm always going to have a bias. I'm curious.
No, I think that's completely fair.
I will
and he's
always
magnificent.
I will always, and I have a feeling already that Wednesday's, kind of my kind of character. But knowing nothing, I just feel like he might be that.
Pretty certain that's the case, Daphne.
So this is the best thing. It's just like my favorite actor is in my kind of well, again, Swearingen was also a great combo. Maybe we could do a fan fiction where Swearingen was actually Wednesday in a different period of time.
Well, I think if we're going to do that, we need to know Deadwood a lot better, and that means we're going to have to do a Deadwood podcast, Daphne. It's the only solution at this point. The listeners at home can't see your face right now, but it's a good face. So what do we make? Deadwood. What do we make of the conversation on the plane? Are we immediately caught up in Wednesday's magic, in his charm, in his ability seemingly to just overwhelm the people around him with sheer force of charisma?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Pretty emphatically, yep.
Yes. No, it works for me completely. And again, just from the jump.
Yeah. I should say, Daphne, that the sequence with Wednesday in the airport where he's trying to con his way into first class, that is not our introduction to that character in the book. No,
we get it later. Yeah, which I actually did personally prefer.
That's funny. And I love it this way because this is what I know.
Yeah.
It's good either way, I think. But I like that it takes Shadow by surprise in the book. But but there's something too about watching him observe, and you can see that Shadow is skeptical even in the airport. That makes me, I don't know, respect and trust Shadow a little bit more. Even.
That he's not surprised when he sits down next to Wednesday in first class and realizes, oh, you're not that guy you were pretending to be. Yeah. He immediately understands the con, which is great and speaks to Shadow's capability.
Traveler.
It does.
Exactly
absolutely.
Right. Fellow traveler.
Oh, no, I love, no. Yeah. This, well, and it, I mean, again, not knowing the book, but it's just like, I love that these two are just like, okay, we get each other. They're very different, obviously. But that they have this common language of being con men, which is, okay. Can I talk a little bit about con men and the idea of con men being gods? Like, I'm so into that. I am so into this because, again, in my experience of this, where the mundane and the not the magical and the
sure. I think you can call it magical. I think that works. Yeah, okay. I mean, gods. Sure.
Right. Where that doesn't seem that different or that separated from each other. But con men have always, like, kind of their place in stories has always been that they live on a separate plane from the rest of us because they are able to control us, because they're able to get what they want, just like Wednesday says. And so I love that. So it's almost like, you know, the fact that these two meet and see each other immediately is that thing. And then you're saying, like, hey, we're people who can live outside of the rules. We're people who can use our abilities, you know, be they whatever kind of abilities, magical or mundane, to control other people and control the environment around us. So I love that actually ends up being, for me, seeming like a stronger division than the division between gods, the God world and the non-God world, and the fact that they're combined to each other. Initially, all we know of Wednesday is that he's a con man.
Yeah.
And, you know, later on, you start getting hints that he's more than that. But I don't know. That just really works for me. It's just like,
no, I see it.
Like,
and I don't think that those two ideas aren't disconnected completely. Wednesday mentions, as he's talking to Shadow, about the power of belief in the story, in the con. You just have to make them believe you. Right. Which is then directly repeated when he's talking about Newton. What is it that keeps the plane in the air? Is it Newton or is it faith?
Oh, my God, that's my favorite line.
All we could talk about while watching that was the very similar exchange that we get from Firefly, or actually from Serenity, the Firefly movie. Oh, love is what keeps her in the air when she ought to fall down, which is, I like that idea very much too, but Newton versus Faith really, really worked for me.
Pretty great.
That was the moment that I fell
the connection between con men and gods is, textual and explicit, as well as being like a more general kind of archetypal connection.
Right. Well, and the beautiful thing, I mean, I guess I do really love con men stories. So, I mean, I there are some people I think who see con men just as bad. I'm not one of those people. Like, I think, you know, the beautiful thing about a con is that you're giving people what they want while getting what you want. And you're showing them what they want to see.
That's fascinating. Okay.
So, like, for me, it was like I had never really thought about this. I mean, obviously, you know, we all know in our world there are people who claim to be religious people who are in fact con men. But the idea of a god being a con man just so worked for me, because it's like it's just fascinating. You know, it's that whole, there's an exchange. That's a thing. It's like a con man is not a thief. A con man is someone who gives you something you want.
Yeah, sure.
Right, but not exactly, because sometimes you just get the image. You don't actually get anything, but you just get an idea of what you wanted, and they get the actual goods. But it is an exchange. It's not a theft.
Right. Yeah. They sell you a story. Sure.
Yes. Yeah, they sell you a story, don't they?
We'll circle back around to Wednesday in Shadow in just a few minutes when we get to the bar. But first, we have our Somewhere in America intercession here. We have a break in the narrative flow to go and get our Bilquis scene. This was always going to be the scene which attracted the most attention, I think, in the first episode of American Gods, because this is the scene that attracts the most attention in the first part of the novel.
Right.
Elizabeth, you, I think it's fair to say, love the Bilquis scene.
Love it in the book, especially. I love it in the book. It was it still has been my favorite part that I've read so far.
Right.
So it worked for me very well. And I was so surprised to hear how many people that it threw out.
Sure.
Because for me, that was when I really was invested in the mythic scope of the story. As an adaptation, you want to know as well? As the adaptation, I was so in for so long. It was perfect, spot on perfect, until for me we got the complete visual effect, like the special effects, and specifically what didn't work for me was the shrinking of the man. Like I would have, if we were going to go one way or the other, she should have gotten bigger. She should have swollen on the screen. So I would have preferred to see that if we had to go one way, but really, some sort of subtlety I would have preferred. I really would have preferred a couple of shots
earlier when we're doing some kind of digital processing on him to make him a little smaller, where it is more subtle, where it is more, I don't know, respectful of the metaphor, I suppose, and a little less literal. But the full realization of it, I actually like you, love the scene in the book. I like this version of the scene even more. I think all of the adaptive choices that were made here are absolutely on point. We change the guy fundamentally from the book.
I love the change of the guy.
We
love the change to online dating. Love it.
Gorgeous. The dialogue is perfect. The scene is luminous. And then, just like you, it loses me at the end.
Right there.
Because we just go a little too far and go a little too literal.
Yep.
I think. Daphne, how did you feel about it not coming in with the same experience of the scene in the book?
Well, I did. I mean, that was actually in the part that I did read. I had read this scene in the book, so it's got to be pretty early in the book, right?
It is. End of the first chapter. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I did actually read it. I don't remember having strong feelings. I mean, I know it does bring out strong feelings.
It does.
I don't remember having strong feelings about it. I really... Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't talk about the book because I really don't remember. I don't remember like what I thought about the whole story at that point. I remember that scene in particular, so I guess it did make an impression on me, but I don't feel like I had strong feelings about it. I really liked it here, not remembering, like I know from just on Twitter, like that she was a prostitute in the book, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Instead of online dating.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. That seems like a great choice.
I think it's a great choice. Yeah, I loved that.
What I liked about it is, again, back to this thing of like, you know, of our world and God world not feeling that different. Like you could look at what her side, I mean, until right at the end, I mean, until it's obvious what's going on, her side of it really does work as just like an insecure woman who just needs a whole lot of sweet talking, like a whole lot of recognition from a man. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. So like it works like that. And then when you see what it is, you're like, oh, damn, she's like, she needs actual bodies to be consumed for empowerment. And I was like, yeah, that's a cool God thing. Like that's, it just really works for me. Right. Yeah. It just really works for me. Right. As a part of mythology. And I loved that. I love that they're just like in a normal bed, but they have the candle and there's just like hints of both things.
And she tells him, light this.
Right. Right. And it just, right, exactly. But it's like every single aspect of what they do up until the very end could just be
Sure.
read, at face value, kind of like Wednesday and being con men. Like, it's just,
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just really enjoying that. I'm really enjoying. And so like, I'm actually hoping and really looking forward to the moment where hopefully Wednesday has a thing like that, where like sudden you're like, damn, he wasn't at all what I thought he was.
Yeah.
I'm going to enjoy that if I get it.
Yeah.
And don't tell me if I'm going to get it, but I will enjoy that because it's like with her, I just felt like it was neat to have a scene like that in the first episode where you're like, okay, everything seems kind of like it, could be just our world. And then suddenly not at all.
Yes.
And so that was really fun because now I'm looking forward to those moments throughout.
Yeah, and it gives us a really interesting perspective on one of the primary functions of mythology, which is the kind of explanatory myth. We have fears of the subversion of the birthing process. This is like deep Freudian, awful, evolutionary psychology that I don't want to venture too deeply into because God is just murky and dire. But that is like a primal, associative fear or a primal associative, taboo. And we usually create myths in order to explore metaphorically these things which are true about our experience of the world. But here, because we're exploring the metaphor first, we're literalizing the metaphor first, we get this very different perspective on what a myth is, on what a god is, particularly in the context of gods being either created or sustained through belief. So I love the scene in the book. I love the literalization of that scene up to that point. I still think it's a triumph. I still think it's beautiful. You mentioned the candles, Elizabeth, and the whole aesthetic of the place. I don't know where this room is. This room feels otherworldly and yet isn't explicitly otherworldly.
But absolutely felt like a shrine,
It
like
did,
a temple.
didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's not a hotel room.
No.
I mean. So I like it
And
very,
the bar
very much.
has that as well. The bar also, they made it so freaky that it could be someplace with just like this weird theme bar.
Yeah.
Sure.
But it also is like they went a little bit too far with it. Oh, what I wanted to say about Bilquis going to the bar is like after the Bilquis scene, not knowing much, I was just like, now when that waitress starts talking to Shadow, I'm like, oh, so is she a god? Like at that point, I'm just like, is everyone a god? Like, who knows who's a god? Like, so it's just like the way she was interacting with him, like could be just like, waitress in a bar flirting with very good looking man.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or this could have been her trying to draw him into something too, like Wednesday was trying to draw him in. Like, is she working with Wednesday? Like, this is where my mind went. It was just like, is she like, does this, are they all working together? Is there like a conspiracy about Shadow? I just had no idea. So I was
like that very much, not least of all because I think it roots us in Shadow's POV because he has to at this point be wondering the same thing.
Like,
About
what the
everybody.
fuck?
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, especially when Wednesday shows at the bathroom. So the
Especially when
bathroom's what I
Wednesday
wanted
shows
to talk about. I want to talk about the bathroom. No, there's this. Okay, so there's this sound effect, this sound, this bit of the music, I guess. But
I
it
can't
feels
believe we
to me
haven't
more
talked
like
about
a
the soundtrack yet.
I know.
But go ahead.
No, but this isn't the soundtrack, which is what I love most about it. But this is a sound. There's a sound that I just dubbed like the magical sound. It's the sound that happens that I feel like is when we transition, like when suddenly something like makes like a switch is flipped in a way.
Okay.
And this happens in the bathroom. So, so Shadow's in the bathroom and then he hears Wednesday talking to him and then Wednesday continues talking to him. And he opens the door. He's like, I'm out of here. And he opens the door and then you have that sound. And that's right when Wednesday again shows that he knows too much stuff. And Shadow closes the door again with that sound. And for me, that felt like the bathroom was the same place, but it had shifted. So that kind of goes to your red room thing. Like, it's just like that, like somehow like he's in the same physical space, but maybe it had shifted to like from the mundane to the magical with that sound. When
either literally externally or Shadow's perspective had
it doesn't matter, right? I feel like right now we have no idea if we're living, like you said about the POV. I have no idea if what we're experiencing is just what Shadow's experiencing, or if we're experiencing is the truth, whatever that means. But yeah, it was just so interesting. It's like he opened that door. Wednesday said stuff, close the door with what I have decided is this sound that happens when we make this shift. And it just felt like the mood, they didn't change the lighting. They didn't change anything about that bathroom. But for me, it had shifted.
Yeah.
And their
Interesting.
conversation
Yeah.
took on a new direction from that point.
So then we move into the bar and we get two sequences, two storylines playing out here. The first being the compact between Wednesday and Shadow and the symbolism of the drinking of the mead. As literally everyone on Twitter pointed out, A, that's not mead, and
Not
B, you
mead.
don't serve mead in shot glasses.
That was such a weird choice. Why?
I genuinely don't know. I'm not
was
at
a
all
weird
sure why
choice.
that choice was made. I like very much the symbolism of the 3-beat. The first one is the offer. The
Sure.
second one seals the deal. The third one's the charm.
Okay, of
The
course.
third
That's-
one's the
The
charm.
third one's the
Yeah.
charm. That's narratively gorgeous. And
Yeah.
I'm willing to accept mead in shot glasses to make that work, but I don't understand why it was clear.
I don't know. And to me, it would have worked so beautifully to have, 3-footed mugs that look like they absolutely did not belong in this bar. Like, there's no way that Wednesday actually went up there and ordered them. There's no way. Like, that would have worked better for me, actually.
Yeah.
So it was a strange choice. I'm not sure that one worked.
I can say why I think it does work. The shot glasses work for me because Shadow drinks the first one before he realizes this is part of him making a compact. And so if somebody gives you a line of shots, you're just going to start drinking them. And so I felt like that's the same thing. It's like he offered Shadow something that Shadow would understand from his own world and would start doing without thinking about it.
Interesting.
Had the cups been weird, or had he
Yeah.
given him 3 really big cups, he
Okay,
would have been
fair.
like, what the fuck? But
Okay,
if he...
fair.
am I allowed to swear? Are we,
Yes,
are we
yes.
doing
No,
explicit?
you're
Yeah,
absolutely
of course
fine,
we're doing
yes.
explicit. Bill quiz.
Yes.
Yes.
So because he gave him 3 shots, that was something that was easily recognizable for him as a normal thing to do. And only while he's in the process of doing it does it transform into something that actually is part of this whatever is going on between them.
Daphne, I think you just made this whole scene work for me.
Okay.
I think you just did it. That's
Yeah.
a great explanation. I like that
Because
a
I thought
lot.
about that a lot too. Because
Yeah,
it's like each one of
yeah.
them got different stuff, but giving a guy 3
Still
shots is
could
a
have
thing
been
that's done.
a little more yellow in color for me. But okay.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Just maybe
absolutely.
just a hint.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Right, but you don't
Mistaken
want it
for
to be
tequila
too
would have been fine.
weird.
But I was
because
say,
then
if it
would
looked like
destroy.
tequila, that would have been completely fine.
Sure. Yes. Right. It didn't need to be clear. It needed to be
Yeah.
something that looks like an alcohol that you would drink in a shot without asking, what is this?
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
He needed to ask, what is it after he drank the first one? He needed to be partway down that road.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too, very much. We also get the introduction of Mad Sweeney here. This plays out actually pretty much like it does in the book, like really very
yeah.
close.
Very close.
We get a couple of odd specific lines are changed, and I'm not sure entirely why, but broadly it plays out as it does in the book. I guess we can talk about Pablo Schreiber then.
Is that the guy?
Yep.
Love him. Electric.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yep, big fan. Again, I like the casting in general, but he had such an energy about him. Loved him from the go, and just that little bit of scary crazy, but somehow I still want to hang out. Yeah, it was really fantastic. It was
Okay, Liz,
perfect casting.
You like that guy. I'm starting to realize this is a character you adore. You love the guy who's like kind of personable and a little scary crazy because
Yeah,
he is kind of our Charles Vane.
Sure. Well, it is like Charles Vane. So many people didn't like Charles Vane. Yes, fair enough.
That's the Starz original program, Black Sails. You should have watched it already.
I know you should have, and yeah, certainly if you're going to understand me because I really speak in black sales most of the time.
You do.
Sorry, everyone.
So we like Mad Sweeney. We're positive on Mad Sweeney here.
Absolutely, all the way through. Yeah, his line for the fucking delight of it. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm in, and I love this. Yup.
Yes.
In.
Like the sap rising in the springtime. It's
no.
very,
Say it in
very
the
good.
accent though, but yes.
He
Right?
works.
No, but I love that.
I like that
because-
they gave him in the book. He doesn't have the accent at all,
Right.
and they're like, "Why don't you have the accent?" You know, and he said, "Well, I've been here for forever," which is a thing, and it's a bit. It's part of the whole nobody's
right.
really from America thing. But
But
Go
the
ahead.
way he said "fucking" is the only time he showed any. I mean, I loved it, and
Which is really interesting.
I
because
lovingly mocked Alastair a tiny bit last night during our live tweet because I love that. I said this. I love that Mad Sweeney speaks with certain Irishisms
yes.
yes,
in his
Yes.
English, but without the accent. Again, I don't really understand the meaning of it, but
until his blood is up,
really
until the more passionate he gets, the broader his accent gets.
Right,
Bilquist did the same thing. Did you notice?
Yes.
Okay.
Which
We're
was beautiful.
clearly going to be paying a lot of attention to who
now
people
I want
are.
Now I
and
want
where people
Wednesday
are
to
from.
do that. Now I want Wednesday to do that too.
Certain that'll happen. I'm very, very confident that'll happen. Because we didn't talk about this, but Ian McShane's accent also a little bit weird.
Right.
It's not quite what you would expect. Sometimes it's more naturalistically Ian McShane.
Right.
But then there are odd lines he gets where he's almost drawling them. There's a real kind of heavy, almost southern inflection, just odd words, odd phrases. And I think that's entirely purposeful. I think this is completely representative of who Wednesday is and where and when Wednesday is. This is really working for me. The attention that we're paying to voice specifically, just gorgeous.
Back to like Shadow and who Shadow is, because you all know more about him. So I really spent a lot of this time trying to decipher what I can about his personality. Sure. I love that he was okay with this coin toss because he needed someone whose luck was better than his own.
Yes, okay.
And then when Wednesday says he shows that perhaps he was cheating all along, or cheating, using powers, whatever, cheating using some force. Shadow's okay with that. Like Shadow totally accepts that. And so that showed to me that what Shadow wants is someone who is more lucky than him, but not necessarily in the narrow definition of luck that we have. Like that someone who's lucky either by luck or by the ability to create their own luck.
I think that's completely fair. Shadow's also, I think, searching for identity, searching for a path. And as much as he's pushing back against Wednesday, he's still kind of caught under this charm. He's, Wednesday's charismatic spell has
to
worked.
Power. Maybe
that may also be true,
that he's pushing his own power possibly down with this cowardice that's either self-imposed already there. But he's attracted to power outside of himself.
I like that.
Okay. Sorry, that actually was before and after the fight. Part the coin cross was before and the other part was after. So now let's talk about that fight.
Perfect, because it connects with the coin tricks and it connects with Mad Sweeney. The detail that I love most about this entire sequence is that when Mad Sweeney is summoning the coins, he's doing it out of sight of the viewer. He's reaching beyond the bounds of the frame, or he's reaching behind objects in the scene. We don't ever see the coin appear in his fingers.
So he literally
just be a coin
reaches up out of our sight and plucks a coin out of the air. It's so unnecessarily well done. I love the discipline that it takes to put that together.
Because I didn't notice, but yes, that's wonderful. So much better than it just, appearing on
a little
screen.
CGI coin,
CGI
coin. Apparating into his hand.
Because it could just be a con. Also, he could just be a magician. And Shadow says, "Do you have all those up your sleeve?"
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and Shadow, you missed this, but there's a lovely thing in the book where Shadow says that he doesn't have the gift of storytelling to really be a good, true magician. He doesn't have that gift to make people believe. So he just has to focus on the art of the trick.
Yes.
Shoot.
Knowing you as we do, Daphne, if you enjoy this series, definitely go read the book.
Oh, no, I am going to read the book. There's no question.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Who's a storyteller and who's a not storyteller?
Yes.
I do like that
the
thing.
power of that is pretty amazing. So then we get the fight between Mad Sweeney. The provocation that we get from Mad Sweeney is extraordinary. He is gleefully, joyously malevolent in that moment and provokes him.
I love him a lot.
He's very, very, hateful almost, but also very, very good.
Super
and watchable.
fun.
And this excellent beat where he takes off like the, again, California country pearl snap shirt. And underneath you have this, could have been any time in,
this Irish roustabout kind of,
Yes. Into it.
They're playing hard on the stereotypes there.
They are.
They really are.
I was into it. Worked very well for me.
How does the violence in this sequence work for you? Because I did see some commentary on Twitter, and I've seen some commentary surrounding the show, that the way that Shadow responds to this provocation with outright aggression, with sudden and startling violence, particularly when he has Sweeney at the bar and is just beating him in the face. Does that shift in any meaningful way your perspective on Shadow as a character? Does that change your understanding of who he is?
No, I think it brought up to me his being on the phone with Laura when he said what the sky felt like.
Right.
Like if
Right.
it would just storm already, then it would feel better.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
Mm.
See, for me, it was part of what constructed my idea of him as someone who is
Yes.
choosing
Bottling something up.
right,
Yes.
who's choosing to not want to engage with the world rather than
Sure.
someone who actually is truly afraid of the world. Like, I mean, he is truly afraid, I guess, from the beginning, but it felt not like something that it felt like something a choice he was making to be that person as opposed to
Sure.
the other option, whatever it is, and thinking now it has to do with violence because he also talks about how he won't hurt people for fun.
Right. Well, we had seen his that guttural scream that he did there at the state park, and I think that pointed to some of that too. That there's a pent up something that needs a release valve.
And we know too that he was, of course, imprisoned for violent crime. He
Right.
was, this is not something that is completely out with his character. This is something that's somewhat true to Shadow's nature.
So yeah, I wanted to bring up. This is fascinating to me because I thought of it just last night while we were live tweeting, but everyone seemed to respond to it. So now I'm curious what you all have to say about it. Is that I had this sudden impression where I said, is fighting regenerative to Mad Sweeney the same way that sex is, or whatever, consuming people during sex is to Bilquist? Because that just like struck me while I was watching it last night. Yeah, it just didn't seem like Mad Sweeney was just like, hey, I want to fight because I'm bored. Like he seemed to need it more than that.
Sure.
It certainly does seem to be primal. It seems to be integral to his nature. I don't know. Elizabeth, what do you think?
I like the theory very much. I can't speak to whether we can get more Mad Sweeney in the book because I haven't yet. So I like that a lot, and I do think, like you said, sap rising in spring. Like there was something.
Yeah,
It
the
felt
sheer
right.
joy of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It just felt. I mean, maybe because of the
But whether
context
it
of the
was
show.
as literal as it was for Bilquist, I don't know.
Right. It just felt to me more than just like, I mean, there are obviously people who really, really, really enjoy fighting and have all sorts of like, their blood surging and that's wonderful to them. But it just felt because of the context, because he's a leprechaun. So I don't know if that makes him a god or not. I have no idea.
Well, yeah, exactly what is and is not a god in American Gods is a little fuzzy around the edges. But
he's not mundane.
Yes.
Right.
There is, I think, we mentioned earlier the cutaway that we get of Wednesday grinning at the bar as the fight is unfolding. And I guess this isn't so much a spoiler as it is perhaps a point
Can we
of
talk about who
speculation.
Wednesday is?
I mean, we basically can at this point. The show is not playing this
I don't think they're
particularly
playing
close
it
to its chest.
No.
But this spoke to me of the prologue that we got.
Yeah.
Right.
When we think of the Northmen on the beach, because their god is a god of war.
Right.
So they fight.
Oh,
and that is when he intercedes.
Yeah, that is good.
Well, and they poke out their eyes, and then he has that line
and then
about
he has one eye.
Yes, yes, we're definitely
I have
drawing
an eye.
that connection.
I have an eye for this. Just the one.
Just the
Just
one.
the one.
Yes.
Yep. And Wednesday, that's my day. Yeah.
But the final
we
beat
should get there.
of Wednesday grinning at the bar as this fight is unfolding absolutely spoke to me of the fight on the beach. And then because it is the fight, it is the sap rising in springtime that leads to his intercession there on the beach that
Had
brings
we
him
been
effectively
outdoors,
to
he would have
America.
chatted with the wind and made the wind come.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
So I think that may be part of the dynamic behind the fight, but it is certainly true to Mad Sweeney's nature too. And as we see, I think absolutely true to Shadow's nature, though Shadow crucially stops.
Right.
He decides
tries
that he's
to.
had, he tries to,
Right,
he decides
right.
that he's had enough. He
We're
decides
done
that
now.
he has won. He doesn't need to kill this guy or even,
but-
knock him unconscious.
I don't think it's just that he's done. It was in response to Mad Sweeney saying that stuff about the sap rising. Like, he
Oh,
was
right.
horrified.
Yeah, like I don't want this. Yeah,
Well,
I don't
he had
want
just
to
said,
feel the way I feel now.
Right. I don't fight. I don't fight for the enjoyment. I don't fight for fun. And Mad Sweeney, and then he fought, and Mad Sweeney's like basically like, "Hey, isn't this fun?" And he's like,
Yeah.
"Wait, I just said I don't do that thing."
Yeah, no, that's good.
So from the fight, we hard cut to the car the next day. And I love that cut. That is a very Brian Fuller cut. That-
Oh, interesting. I have
Shadow
no Brian
and
Fuller.
Mad Sweeney arcing toward each other, and we just
Just the
jump
pause.
into the car the next day. We get the second, I guess, of our road trip sequences.
Sure.
which is absolutely crucial to Americana, and the moments at which the show feels the most like Supernatural,
Yes.
I think.
Well, especially with that big black car. I was
Exactly
like,
right.
We just need a Chevy Impala, and this is good. Yeah.
Borrowed it from the Winchesters. It's fine.
Totally good.
Then we get, of course, Shadow is, again, immaculate in his shirt in the back of the car. We arrive at Eagle Point. We have this brief exchange between Wednesday and Shadow. This is possibly my favorite moment from Ian McShane in the entire episode. I will tell you this, and I will tell you this only once. Take all the time you need. It's so good.
Yep.
I know.
And his, again, gravitas is the only word. All of that presence and all of that authority focused on this, what would seem to be a completely inconsequential moment. Though watching the episode for the second and third time, you begin to see how many times he says that to Shadow, or variations of that. This is clearly
absolutely.
very, very important. Then we get the funeral, and we get my favorite performance in the entire episode.
Oh my God.
Betty Gilpin as Audrey is extraordinary.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Yes.
What did you make of her, Daphne? Putting all this pressure on you now to put her alongside Ian McShane.
I mean, I thought she was great. I don't have really strong feelings. I mean, she did a
Really?
great job with, you know, a really challenging story moment. But yeah, no,
Sure.
no, I mean, I thought, again, I'm not trying. I mean, don't take this. I mean, it's hard to not be that excited when the two of you just said what you said. Like, I thought she was great.
That's fine.
No,
I
we
thought
put you
she
in a
was-
very difficult position there, Daphne.
I
We
thought
really
she was
did.
great. Sorry. It was definitely
No,
not my, it was not my favorite. I mean,
completely get it.
she did a great job, and I didn't come out of it going, oh my God, that, like, because
Really?
I had Ian McShane and I had Pablo Schreiber.
Oh, that's
Sure.
true. You're
No,
I
that's
mean, I'm just sorry. I'm
completely
just
fair.
like,
yeah.
though, you know, I just was really riding just on this high of the three of them, and so she did a great job. I mean, it made me really sad. I got a little teary eyed. So that's big deal because I don't know her enough to really care yet. So I guess she made me care.
Sure.
So that's
the
a big
scene
deal.
in the church is good, I think, and then we get the funeral montage, which is, God, somewhat less effective for me just because we're using Where Did You Sleep Last Night?
Just a little too on point.
A little too on the nose. I mean, I think that is a fair accusation for all of the music in the episode. Maybe just a hair too specific.
I
But
really
even
enjoyed all the music, even that.
Yeah,
I really did.
It's great music. But I think there's even something to that. Again, the show's idea of itself as a TV show.
Sure.
That it is, hey, I am self-consciously aware that TV shows use appropriate music to underscore moments of great emotional impact.
No,
I'm going to do that thing and do it specifically in a way that is just a hair too specific or is alternatively perfectly specific enough.
Right.
We'll have to wait and see.
I think the wink wink of that is just glorious.
I like it too, I think.
Again, this is a show about gods. Like, I just love that we get into like that. We're like, we have these, you know, basically the music becomes our like silliness. That becomes our comedy in this weird ass episode.
Interesting.
And so it's just like, it's just a really fun counterpoint for me. It's just like, it's that thing. It's like, this thing's called American Gods. You're like, I guess maybe it's important to understand for people like me who didn't read the book. It's just like American Gods sounds really ominous.
Yes.
So to have these moments where it's just like a little silly, and the music is doing that because the show isn't really doing that at all in this episode. But the music's totally doing that, and so it's that same thing. It's like the plastic. It's just like we're giving you this. You're coming into this thinking it's going to be this, and then we're going to give you this stuff that's just totally subverting that. And I feel like there's a message there, and I can't put my finger on it yet, but I feel like there's a message there.
I see what you're saying, and I think that we get hints of that too in the characters. I think we get. I found Loki Lysmith to be genuinely funny. There are some turns of phrase and some mannerisms in the performance that I completely love. Obviously, Wednesday can be extremely droll and dry and funny. Matt Sweeney has his moments too. Audrey in the graveyard when she clambers on top of Shadow and tells him to fuck her because she's trying to get her dignity back.
Yes.
That is so grim and awful and terrible and true and
Yep.
No. God.
the whole thing is just, it was a complete gut punch for me watching that. Elizabeth, Audrey,
I am in complete agreement. I found that performance astonishing. The whole scene, the whole sequence, both of them, very human and true and visceral and shocking and all nail on the head. It worked for me completely, and she was so good. And that specific kind of emotional drunk is really hard to do. I think it almost always comes off a little bit silly or a little bit over the top, but she had that slightly thick-lipped, just trying to get the words out, heavy-eyed thing, just perfect.
And when we get those hard transitions, Shadow, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Oh my God! And the hug and both of the hugs. No,
the second hug was amazing because it showed you. I mean, the first hug just, was a mess. Like, I don't think it didn't feel to me like she was trying to have sex with him from the first moment, but it was like, then she was like, this might be a good thing.
That was an idea that came on her suddenly. Yes.
Right. Yes.
But then the power for me of that scene was the second hug, because the second hug was a real hug. The second hug was her like shedding all the crazy stuff that's going on and just actually needing a hug. And
Minor
so it's
spoilers.
like, that's a really fast. She just went through a lot of emotions really quickly.
She's going through them all, which is fantastic. When she has that moment, who knew I could be this angry?
Oh, I love that one
my
too.
God.
So good.
Oh my God.
It feels very, very real.
She's
it all
angry,
feels so
and
real.
she's also, I think, legitimately aroused. She's also just exhausted.
Yeah.
And humiliated.
So hurt.
And so humiliated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's
Stunning.
incredibly hard to watch, but also impossible to look away from.
away.
I'm very glad to say, in what is a very minor spoiler, I suppose, Audrey does recur in the book. She gets a very brief scene, and it's a fairly, from some perspectives, a fairly inessential scene later in the book, but she is credited with 2 episodes on IMDb.
Oh,
so
good.
we will get to see her again.
Excellent.
We're possibly
So
going
glad
to
to
do
know
the
that.
scene from the book, or perhaps there's going to be a new scene written for her. But
Because she's so damn good.
wow, I just adored her.
Yeah.
Just
I completely agree.
fantastic. And then, is it fair to say that the show takes something of a turn?
Yeah.
I think there have been pacing problems pretty much from the moment that we arrive in the bar. I feel as though, as much as I love the bar scene, it does run on a little bit, because the first half of the episode feels very tight and very purposeful. And I feel like we lose some narrative momentum when we hit the bar. That doesn't really recover as we move through the back half of the episode. And then Shadow is walking home when he finds a drone by the side of the road, and we get the technical boy scene. This is very freely adapted from the content in the book. What did you make of Technical Boy, Daphne? Did he work for you?
No, I'm mostly baffled. I mean, I'm also very distracted. I have 2 things that distract me that are not the fault of the show. One, or maybe the first one is synthetic toad skin. I'm like, just, I spend each time I've watched it, I just spend way too much trying to figure out what the hell that's about. And and then the thing that's not the fault of the show is that my daughter happens to really, really, really love the Spy Kids movies. Sorry, Robert Rodriguez.
Oh, yeah.
So the faceless guys, just like really. So it's like, for me, like from my experience of it, it almost seems like a really neat kind of intentional thing that's like harkening back to a movie thing from the 90s that like was really kind of cool CGI back then. So it's like my brain gets a little confused with stuff that I know was not their intention. That's just from my own experience.
Yeah, that actually helps me, because that was part of my problem, is that it felt too...
it felt a little Shark Boy and Lava Girl,
Well, sometimes. Well, and also we got the same feeling with the CGI in the Bone Orchard, where they were not trying to go for anything realistic. Like it was a CGI feeling that they were going for. And certainly that's purposeful in this scene. But what I missed, I was talking to Alastair about, like, the feeling that you get when you're reading the book is it feels like a scene out of The Matrix. So it has this kind of like 90s tech, but also some kind of post-apocalyptic. There's just a little bit of the, I want black and green for this scene.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
So there's a kind
not
of dirty
white and
90s
not white
hacker
and
culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think is one of the things that makes this sequence falter for me, is that in the book, it already feels a little anachronistic.
Right.
It feels as though Technical Boy is trying to catch up with where we actually are. He's a few years behind the time, because
right.
in 2001,
which
The
would
Matrix
make
was
his
already
claims,
a little passé.
Right, which would make his claims of being the future and Wednesday the past
Yes.
Exactly
be
right.
kind of hollow in a really interesting
Exactly
way.
Yes.
right, Daphne.
So
Yes.
that's why when you say it reminds you of these 90s kids shows, I actually feel better about
I like
the
that
choice.
more.
I'm like, okay,
Yes.
that's good then. That's
because
good.
within the universe
Right.
of American Gods as it's presented to us, this feels very sci-fi.
Well, no, but
It
okay.
feels
So can I go a little far? Like,
advanced
so,
tech.
so I forget. He calls them the children. What does he call
Yes.
them?
The children. Yeah.
So, like, it was a weird mix for me because, you know, as a designer like this, so there was like the way they're built has a kind of 3D printing feeling to it. So
Yeah.
that's very now.
Yeah.
Yes.
But like
okay.
the faceless, the way that they're faceless and it feeling almost like clay. Like, again,
Yes.
that was like in, I forget which Spy Kids. They all blend together for me. I love them. Anyone who loves
I've
those
heard they're
movies,
really
don't
fun,
get me wrong.
actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're fantastic.
Yeah, I've heard that.
We watch them a lot. But like there are basically minions of bad guys who have a very similar look to that, where it could be
that's so
digital or it
interesting.
could be claymation, and you can't really tell.
yeah.
So it's like they're kind of like a mix, like because the 3D printing aspect of it is very very of now.
Yeah.
And
Which
and
also, because of the polygonic mesh of
Right,
the 3D
exactly.
printing, also feels like a kind of mid-90s CGI
Sure.
model. You know, you build from the frame up.
how
so
you would see
It kind of has both of those references. Yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Are we
So,
all agreed that
he
Technical
feels
Boy...
like a poser no matter what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, certainly, yes. Even the artificial toad skin, this hallucinogenic smoke that he's blowing at
With
Shannon.
his vape, which I
Yes.
really liked.
Right.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the confidence of Wednesday. Wednesday is so confident, so comfortable in his skin.
Sure. Yeah.
And Technical Boy is just the opposite of that. He is so showy. He is so not, you know, and
Well, and has to be, because he has to avoid the worst sin that Wednesday has committed, which is being old.
right. Sure.
Interesting.
And that insecurity, you know, that urgent teenage insecurity that we've all felt,
Right.
where we absolutely have to be cool or life is over. I mean, that is a way of life, apparently, for this character. Are we all in agreement that this is the weakest section in the first episode?
Yeah, I actually didn't watch it now before we recorded it.
Yeah.
I think I got it.
Again. Yeah.
Every time I watch it, I think how startling it would have been to end the episode with the gold coin sinking through the soil into Laura's grave.
Absolutely, because then you would just be stuck with that image and just going, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What happened there? And like
Yeah.
it happened right after the hug, so I'm like, is it because of the hug? Like, is it because
Sure,
of the
sure.
the emotional? Did the
some
did
jealousy,
the fact
some
right?
sure.
Did the fact
Yeah.
that the emotional mood between the two of them change? Is that what facilitated? I mean, I came out of that
Sure.
coin going, ooh, what you know?
Ooh,
what's going-
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
What
we
made
move
this
into,
happen? Like, what does this mean? Why did it
Yeah.
happen? Why, you know, it was sitting there for a while, but then suddenly it sunk. Like, there's just,
Right.
there's just that coin left me with all sorts of fascinating questions.
Right.
And then Technical
Elizabeth?
Boy distracted me.
Yes,
yeah.
no, I
well,
think
and then we actually end with the children and the awful lynching and rain scene, which just I hate.
which
I hate.
is indicative, I think, of the show's worst excesses.
Yes.
It's from an illustrative point of view, I think it's very kind of them to give us 30 seconds of just, this is the worst that the show is going to do. This is, you know, the most problematic stuff, from incredibly garish, splashy CGI blood to the lynching imagery to an ending that is ambiguous to the point of disinterest. I think
right.
that
Yeah, that's how I felt. Disinterested.
Right. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Huh.
I'm not given a hook by
No.
this resolution.
Right.
So it is unfortunate. And again, Starz has a problem with this. The Starz original series, that they tend to work really well in a 55-minute format and break when they go to that 65-minute format.
Fascinating. Huh.
That's certainly been true.
See,
I
I'm
haven't.
going to disagree with you about the
I
series
was about to
finale
say.
of Black Sails.
Black sails.
Certainly, this is not true across the board. But as longtime listeners to my
Oh,
podcast
right, you're
will know,
talking about
when we
Outlander.
talked about
Right.
Outlander,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the shorter an
Absolutely.
episode of Outlander was, generally speaking, the better it was, because it was more disciplined and more focused.
Yeah, sure.
And I feel as though just crossing that hour threshold does something. It does something to the production. So,
No, and Black Sails only crossed that threshold once, and they did it with their series finale. And
which,
it was
if you're going to do it, That's when you do
Right.
it. And that also contained at least 2 episodes worth of material in
Sure.
that hour,
Right.
15 minutes, whatever
No,
it was.
but
yeah.
no, I'm now I can just like in my mind just like, what did he say? I'm going to delete the, the technical boy part.
There is no
And-
undelete, technical boy.
Right, there is no undelete. I'm going to delete his scene. I'm sure. Well, I don't know. I have a feeling he might be compelling to me later on if we find him again. I really love your idea of ending it with the coin. That just works
Yeah.
for me so much. That
Nope,
just
I
feels
like
like
that.
it. That feels like it just is like a full story with an ending to the episode
Yeah.
that makes sense within everything that happened up until that point,
Yeah,
and
I
left you
agree.
with good questions.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm much more on the hook with the coin sinking into the earth than I am with which is weird because I really like Shadow. I'm really into him as a character. I really enjoy the performance. I should care that he is on the ground beaten half to death and that the children who were assaulting him have been rendered into
Right.
pieces and splashes of bright blood, but I'm just
Except-
left cold by the whole experience.
Well, except that basically, I mean, again, that weird kind of stylized thing worked better in the opening. I mean, again, I kept the only thing that was interesting about it is that it felt a lot like the opening with the Vikings.
yeah.
Not
Yeah.
Vikings, with the Northmen.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So just the way the blood was splashing and the type of violence and like just like how unnaturally easy parts of bodies were like being smashed
Yeah.
and taken off and stuff like that. That reminded so like maybe that's what they were going for. So like that was mildly again. If you're gonna do that thing where you're just gonna show me lots of blood that kind of looks like dyed corn
Kool-Aid?
syrup,
Yeah.
I'm going to. All I can do is go into intellectual analysis. I'm not going to feel anything.
Yes, you're not going to
Right.
be emotionally connected.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think that's true through the entire Technical Boy sequence, and I like that character very much. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with this depiction. Yeah, we'll get back to it. I'm sure. It's sad to end the episode on a down note. So what I want to
Yeah.
do to wrap up here, I think, is to ask you each in turn for your favorite thing about the episode. It can be a performance, a line, a scene, whatever you like, a set, a prop. Just tell me your favorite thing. Elizabeth, I'm going to start with you. What was your favorite thing about this episode of American Gods?
I have to go with that cemetery scene with Audrey. I really do. It was so compelling, so gorgeous, and very much an adaptation, very much not the interaction we got from them in the book.
No,
If I recall, she was in a car and he was driving, so there was no connection, no physical touch, and it worked for me very well. I mean, that's my favorite scene in this episode.
Neat.
Daphne?
Well, I have more specifics. I know you're expecting me to just say Ian McShane, but I
That's
actually
what I was
have a
expecting, but
specific.
okay, let's do
I
this.
have a specific. My favorite part of the episode is Ian McShane when we first see him on the airplane, and he's explaining to the flight attendant why she doesn't need to take his drink, and how in fact she's going to give one to his friend and bring him another one.
Yep.
That's my
That's-
favorite part.
Pretty fantastic.
Fantastic. I would go for the Audrey cemetery scene too. So instead, I'm going to go right the way to the other end of the episode, and I'm going to go with the very brief phone call that we get between Shadow and Laura. The depth of intimacy that is evident in this very short conversation is just fantastic. The fact that he begins with, "I love you,"
Yeah.
just right off the bat, speaks volumes about their relationship. The
Puppiness.
The puppiness?
Puppy.
Yes, exactly. Which is so great when we play that off later with Audrey. I always hated the two of you as a couple.
Yeah.
It's so, yes, extraordinary. I just love it. And
And how the bartender calls him Kitty.
yes, beautifully done.
Interesting.
One of my favorite things that Wednesday says to Shadow is he says that he would value a man who is smart enough to not, I'm paraphrasing this badly, but he's smart enough to not look smart,
Oh, yeah, sure.
which is like a total con man thing, right?
Yes.
Like this is, but this I feel like also suits my initial feelings about Shadow, that he's not being always the person that he is, either intentionally or unintentionally. But we see that before that. We see an example when he's talking to Loki. I'm just gonna crack up about that forever.
Yep. No, it's
when
pretty
he's
good.
talking
Pretty
to
good.
Loki, and they're talking about not pissing off people in airports.
Yes.
And Shadow says, "Oh, so what you mean is that, that a type of behavior that works in one environment doesn't work in another environment." And Loki's like, "No,
yeah.
I'm saying
piss
don't
off the
piss them
Disney
off.
reports.
And it was just neat because Shadow then in the graveyard, when he's talking, he says something about like, who knew? I'm actually kind of smart. Like I love that also, that like this is something that I know that I need to now look at is like Shadow smart when he's choosing to look smart, when he's choosing not to look smart. Like our first experience of him being smart was basically him getting knocked down, not horribly, but like getting taught like, don't really talk like that. That's not that's not serving you in this conversation. The whole like talking about behavior and environments.
Yeah.
And
it's
then
also
he doesn't really do that ever again in the episode.
Right,
Then he's like, okay, lesson learned. I'm not going to do that thing. And he immediately gets encouraged by Wednesday for that choice.
But then when he's talking with Laura at the grave, I've
then
read
he does it again.
813 books.
Yeah.
Right.
That I think is really important, but also really difficult to keep track of. Shadow changed fundamentally when he was in prison. And we have to remember that as he's re-entering the world, his perspective is different now. He is a smarter, more well-read, more literate, apparently larger man than he used to be. So when we're talking about, I think you've said a couple of times, Daphne, cowardice as he's moving through the world. And
I don't know
I see
if
where you're
cowardice
coming
is
from.
the word I really want.
I would use caution maybe.
Caution,
Just,
yeah.
I think that I want to be mindful of that within the context of Shadow as a transformed person. You know, he doesn't have a place in the world now, and that's all the more emphatically true now that he's lost Laura, now that he's lost his savings because of the reconstructive surgery that was necessary for the open casket funeral, which is an incidental piece of world building, which I really appreciate. It is beautifully precise and also horribly grotesque in a Brian Fuller kind of way. So. Yes. No, I think that's a great pull, Daphne. It's something we can definitely continue to discuss as we move through. We should wrap this up because we've been running longer than expected. Hey, who would have guessed that the three of us sitting around a microphone would talk for a long time?
I'll be damned.
Daphne, Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. Elizabeth, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter, most likely, Lizbeth Ray 555. You can also find me on Common Room Radio. CommonRoomRadio.com is where Daphne and I do Fathoms Deep. I do Disney Villain Deathmatch and Porch Club with Liz and Sarah.
Daphne, where can people find you on the internet, and where can people find your extraordinarily beautiful jewelry?
Yeah.
Well, I am on Twitter at Daphne Olive, and also, yes, I did want to say that at this point when we're recording, Liz and I are still doing Fathoms Deep. So now that you all are watching, now that you all have Starz, go watch that too. Go watch Black Sails.
Definitely.
And my website is daphneolive.com, which is where my jewelry is.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for an edifying and insightful discussion. I'm looking forward to talking about episode 2 with you next week. That's episode 2, The Secret of Spoons. Maybe not as good a title as The Bone Orchard, but I still kind of like it.
Wow, I didn't. I had no idea that's the title. Though, what a weird title! I can't wait to find out why on earth.
I'm looking forward to it. And if you, dear listener, are listening to this episode as it goes live, then you should join me tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern for the next novel-oriented episode of Storms on the Way, in which we are going to discuss all the way to the end of Chapter 6, Pinky Swear. I will definitely make it to the end of Chapter 6 tomorrow. Normally, when I make these rash promises in front of a microphone, I don't have you two laughing at me, but that's fine, I guess.
We love you, Alastair, and we also know you.
Fair. Next week, we'll be back with our thoughts on The Secret of Spoons. Until then, take care.